You're very welcome to this evening's football show. It's Dan McDonnell sitting in tonight on what's been, I suppose, another dramatic day in the young life of Declan Rice and another dramatic day in Declan Rice's relationship with Irish football. Now, coming up later in the hour, we're going to have Uli Hesse on the rise of Hertha Berlin, and we're going also to have, we've got Gary Breen, I think, waiting on the line to discuss the events of today. But I think before that, we should possibly get some audio from earlier on, just to, I suppose, put some meat on the bone of what happened today. If you've been in a bunker until now, we had 11 o'clock this morning. We had the squad announcement for the Irish game against the Ireland's games against Denmark and Wales forthcoming. Declan Rice was not in the squad as expected. He's taking more time to contemplate his international future, and that had been flagged beforehand. Then Martin O'Neill conducts a 1-hour press conference, and during that time, Sky Sports posts a story which says that Declan Rice has decided to play for England. He is declared for England, and he is about to put the paperwork in motion to close the door on his Irish career forever. So afterwards, naturally, as that story breaks, the daily newspaper journalists, Sky, RTE, are waiting around to chat to Martin O'Neill to find out what actually is going on, and this is what happened.
No.
Does it change the position in any way?
No, I think Gareth told me it's inaccurate. And the Sky are going to change it.
It seems to maybe be wrong on a bit, Martin, with the fact that this story is claiming that they plan to, the FA plan to lodge papers with FIFA to start the process of him switching.
No, I'm not in control of that. But all I do know is that Gareth had just mentioned to me that this is inaccurate.
Well, they're taking, they're amending the report slightly to say the word rejection.
They couldn't have rejected, they couldn't have, young Rice couldn't have rejected our call-up because we never called him out.
That word has been taken out and going to be replaced by on the lines of
Well,
Rice.
I'll have to find out whether that's the case. If you have information that I am unaware of, then, I don't know, I'll have to go and check it through.
But your sense, Martin, when you met him was that he was still positively disposed towards it?
I said exactly that. Exactly, no. I thought that it was, I've used the word hopeful. I've said that before, said it again, so that's exactly where it stands.
Does this come as a bit of a shock, or is
No. You standing out here with that there has become rather a shock, And since you're not the best looking fella in the world, so I'd rather look at Tony, to tell you the truth,
Because that's when the last contact was with the family.
Listen, I think at the end of it all, I've been in there. I've gone through the.
No, it's just in the context of the story that's coming out.
I know, but you want another context, and then by the time I get to the bottom of the road, there might be a change of plan, So, young man, I think you should. You're in contact with your group. You should know.
Yeah, I knew nothing about it.
Did you not?
No.
You didn't know anything about it.
No, I didn't know anything.
Oh, remarkable! And you're running the show.
I can show you. I got an email at about 13 minutes to 12, I think. So 15 minutes after you finished the press conference.
Okay, so what have you said? What has been said then?
What has been said is that papers have been prepared, and that.
And where's this coming from? Is it coming from the FAI?
Well,
not from the FAI, but from the FA?
I don't know where it's coming from. Our reporter Rob Dawson is the one who broke out.
You'll understand then, until you get the story, then I can't really comment on it. All I can do is reiterate what I've said in the room for the last hour. And what I said to you was exactly how I felt about it, and that's until Guy and his crew get it sorted out, then I have to say the same.
Martin, I was assuming you'll go and talk to Declan this afternoon or his family.
If Guy gets the story, I should put the pressure onto this young man, because it's his mob that are running it, So at the end of the day, get the story out, get it correct. Okay.
Get it correct. You don't think it is correct, and as far as you're concerned, you don't think the story is correct.
I would be a bit surprised at this minute. I'd be surprised. Okay.
At this minute?
I'd be surprised. Nothing surprises me in this life, but I'd be a bit surprised at their particular story. Okay. All right? Happy enough with that?
That's more than happy with something.
Not a problem.
And with that, Martin O'Neill exited stage left. Now, that was actually the guy he was referring to there was Guy Havard from Sky Sports News. It was Sky Sports News, as mentioned, that had broken the story earlier on. And subsequent to that, they have amended their story to say that Declan Rice is now maybe favouring England as opposed to definitively declaring. So we'll have to see how that one pans out. Now, it wasn't the only talking point today, although it sort of felt like it for those of us that were there. But the other big story today is Harry Arter's return to the squad after his falling out with Roy Keane during the summer. Now, he wasn't the only player to have a row with Roy Keane in the summer. Jonathan Watt, well, that we know of anyway, the other high-profile row with Roy Keane during the summer was with Jonathan Walters, who hasn't actually spoken about the incident yet. That was until today. It was all going on today, where he appeared on the Keith Andrews show live on all our social channels earlier on, and inevitably we had to go down the road of asking John Walters about his fallout with Roy Keane, and here's how that went down.
As a team where we're at, I think there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of new blood coming in, even from years ago. Even players around the hotel that are not involved, and that's a hard position to be in. It's a lot, as you know, it's 25 plus man squad. So when the 11 that play and the ones that are not used to the same faces anyway, and it was a good group. So everyone, it was quite a tight knit group. Now there's a lot of new faces in, so that sometimes takes time to bed. That could be part of the issue. Whether you're losing a bit of experience, a bit of quality, and there's players now who are just finding the way in the Championship as well. Some very good players, but some just finding the way in the next few years. Hopefully they'll come more to the fore. And then the other issue was Stephen Warden's WhatsApp. What's he doing? I don't know. I think I feel for him because he's one of the nicest guys, Stephen, and he's obviously, his friends have asked him, heard a few stories obviously, and his friends have asked him probably what's happened, and he's probably said, that's too long to tell you, I'll put a voice note in. And I think one of his friends somehow, not stitched him up, but somehow got out, hasn't it? And it causes all sorts. Now, I'm not saying stuff like that doesn't go on at clubs. It's just sometimes it's a thing, as you know yourself, you don't see. And some people are different to others. I think everyone knows how Roy is as a player and how he's gone in after his playing days. So it's something that I know a part of anyway, but other people might not. So I can deal with it in my own way, and that's just part and parcel. And Martin's the manager, Roy's the assistant, and that's the way it is. You deal with what's there. I don't know how else I can.
Johnny, my issue, and I've been quite vocal with this, is, and I'm not privy to what goes on behind closed doors, but if it's a regular occurrence, people like you, I don't think it's a problem with, because you've been schooled in a way where you've served an apprenticeship, you've got broad shoulders in both senses of the world. But the younger generation, they're not used to that.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say. It's changing. They're not used to. It's a different world. It's a different world completely. It's a different world of social media and everyone patting you on the back, or it can go the opposite way. And yeah, I know what you're going to say. It's different for the younger lads. Whoa, I've never come across this before. They've gone through 18s, 23s at the academy. But I think that in football's changing. I don't think you can. It's different to what it used to be like, and it's not so much like in the clubs the past few years at Stoke or in Burnley. It's not like that. It's not like that. There's no real. I think that's going out of the changing room as players managing themselves as well. I'm becoming a bit of. I don't know how to put it. Yeah, but they're not used to it. Yeah. They're not used to that. But should they be, is a question. Probably you asking. I don't know.
So there we go. Gary Breen, you're very welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Right, I think we will come back to the Harry Arter, John Walters sort of general scenario there, because there is some interesting stuff I think to talk about and to go through. But I suppose firstly we sort of have to go to Declan Rice, and I am trying to figure out what has actually changed today, if anything at all. Are we still where we were before? But what's your sense of how this has all panned out today in terms of the Declan Rice scenario?
Well, in terms of Martin O'Neill coming out of his press conference and then throwing that type of a bomb where he obviously isn't privy to what's just been announced, I can understand his shock, really, because he's probably thinking, well, this is not in keeping with what I've been told. And obviously Sky now have retracted it a little bit in terms of the wording, but I think we just still need some clarity. I mean, Declan Rice, Jonathan Waters alluded to it there. Young players now use social media. It's very easy to put out a statement from himself on social media as opposed to sitting in front of some reporters and being grilled that way. But it just seems that it's just drifting on too much now. We need an answer one way or another. Now, listen, I respect his thought process, that he needs time to deliberate over what is obviously a difficult decision, because I don't think it's as black and white as it necessarily seemed to be when it initially broke all those weeks ago in terms of, well, listen, are you English or are you Irish? He obviously has an affiliation to both countries and he has to digest what's better for him. The only thing that frustrates me at the moment, I mean, a lot of people saying that, well, how well he's playing for West Ham makes it very difficult for us now. Well, that's a nonsense. Just because he's playing well doesn't mean that he can't come back to Ireland now. That really frustrates me, as if like, well, he's playing so well now, why would he go to Ireland? So he'd only ever go to Ireland when he's playing poorly. And that really, really grates with me at times.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you make the point that it may not be as black and white, because I think when the news broke sort of a month that he was on the fence, and I think yourself, I mean, Kevin Kilban in particular, it was at the time a strong view, well, if he needs to think about it, then maybe it's time to say goodbye. So do you have a bit more sympathy for his position? Do you think there's more sincerity about his position now than might have been the feeling at that stage?
Yeah, listen, I've never, in terms of when he played for Ireland and throughout the age groups, and I've said this before, I don't know Declan, but I really gravitated towards him. Before he ever played any of these games for West Ham, before he played his senior games for Ireland, I remember, and Dan, you'll have seen it, the interview that he gave when he joined the seniors just as a training member down in Cork. And he gave an interview that really pressed my buttons as someone who, not just because I was born in England as such, but someone who, wherever you're born, how much it meant for him to play for Ireland. And that's what I want to hear from all international, and in any sport really. I want to know that they grew up dreaming of it the way we did. And then suddenly this dream potentially is going to come true. And that is what I think as a supporter, from watching from the terraces, watching on the TVs, I want to know that it means as much to those guys playing the game as it means to me supporting the team. And certainly I bought into that. Initially then I felt like I'd been hoodwinked. I said that at the time. That was my exact words, because I thought, well, how can you be so demonstrative about and so passionate about playing for Ireland, and now you're putting the brakes on? I didn't understand it. I've got a bit more sympathy. I never ever felt that it was a career move for him in terms of he just wanted to play for Ireland for international football like so many players do now. That really frustrates me when people make a career decision based on it. I think he genuinely wanted to play for Ireland. I think he genuinely enjoyed it, but it's just leaving a bit of a bad taste in my mouth now, the way that it's dragging on so long, because I admire him as a player. I would love to have him in the Ireland team. But if he doesn't feel that his heart's in it, then let us know now. Wish you well for your career, and we'll concentrate on the Irish players.
Yeah, because I think we have this, I mean, the element of the circus today. You know, has he liked a tweet from the FAI? Has he unliked a tweet? I mean, we're torn here, right? There's two separate angles that we need to give him time and space to think about what the right thing to do is. Yet on the flip side, he's still active on social media and in a way fueling it. So to me, I'm a bit torn in terms of like respecting his position when, I mean, if he was closed away from it completely, then you feel, okay, he's in a bit more of a reflective place. And also, and I'm interested to get your view on this because you're based over in England, there is strong reports coming out there, it seems consistently, whatever about the veracity of them, that he's leaning that way. So clearly somebody in his camp or someone affiliated to him is putting this out there in some way.
Yeah, well, listen, they must be doing something. But I would agree with you there with the tweets. I'm not someone who's on social media, but I felt those type of tweets that were coming out a little bit antagonistic, to be perfectly honest. Step away from it. Don't get involved. Don't like, or whatever the term is. If someone says a little statement about you, just step away from it. Because if you are on social media, well, then come out and give us a statement like an adult. Because there's a lot of maturity, not only on the pitch, but off the pitch, because he's taken on the West Ham board now in terms of getting his full worth as a player. And let's not forget, this is a young man who's transformed West Ham season. There's no doubt about it. They were struggling because they had no athleticism in midfield. He's come in and he solved that. They look like they're playing particularly well now, West Ham. And that's a massive turnaround. Shows a little bit of character about him as well, because initially when Pellegrini comes in, I feared for him because I didn't see Declan getting a nod in an orthodox back four. I didn't feel that Pellegrini rated him enough. Then he brings in Bambuena from South America, brings young Diop for 20-odd million, was caught in Mawson from Swansea. So that suggests that he didn't see him as a centre half as such, but certainly he's improved West Ham. But I agree, and it does annoy me. I just want to know one way or another. Don't tease us. Just let us know now. Be the big man that you are, because you're proving it on the pitch, and just show a little bit more maturity in terms of how you conduct yourself on social media.
Now, one player who is back is Harry Arthur, and we did hear Jonathan Walters there speaking about his own incident with Roy Keane, and Martin O'Neill today suggesting that discussions have taken place, and Harry Arthur is willing to come back in. He's been named on the provisional squad, so I trust that means we'll see him next week. What's your take on that? Well, happy to have him back on the board.
Yeah, I think so. I think it gives another option. I think I don't really buy into the fact that just because he's a Premier League player, it's a massive coup for him to come back, because I think he struggled at times for Ireland. I've been a big fan of his initially. I've seen him throughout the underage groups for Ireland, under 16s. I've seen him come through. I actually saw him at Woking. And my first assignment to scout a player, he was my first ever player I scouted at Woking, trying to get him to come to Barnet. We didn't manage to get him. He went to Bournemouth and his career took off from there. So I took a real interest in it. Obviously, he was a young player at Charlton, was released there. So I'm delighted now that he is back. Yeah, of course I am. But I do understand, and it frustrates me a little bit that just because someone has a go at you, no matter however it's worded, whether or not there's a place for it in the modern day of football, don't let anyone take away what it means to play for your country. Don't step away from playing for your country just because someone's had a go at you. Be big enough, be strong enough to say, well, I don't care what you think. You're the number two. It essentially doesn't matter what you think, Roy. It matters what Martin O'Neill thinks. So he should just be able to bat that away. So it was a little bit frustrating how that developed. But I hope now that this is what the one positive regarding the Irish squad when there's been so many negatives over the last few weeks.
So you sort of empathise with Jonathan Walters' view. I mean, as he articulated it there with the lads earlier, that whatever the issue might be, you come back. It's simple as that.
Yeah, listen, we fall out. Players will tell you they fall out with each other all the time, but it shouldn't be the result that you then don't come and play for your country. He's passionate about playing for Ireland. We had a little bit of difficulty in getting him to play that first game because he had so many injuries. It looked like it wasn't going to happen. Then he came on, done particularly well for a bit at the beginning. Has found his feet a little bit. He was one of the whole team that struggled in the playoffs. There's no doubt about that. But certainly having him back looks like a positive. I'm glad, and I just want to see now that all the dramas off the pitch. I want that squad, those players, to focus on correcting what's going so wrong on the pitch. That's a priority now for me.
Yeah, and I mean that is the key point. I mean, there is two pretty big games coming around the corner here, and I think they've become a sideshow. But I think that will change potentially next week. And okay, so the other news today, which was bad news, is that Seamus Coleman is out, is that Robbie Brady, it would appear, is out. Sean Maguire is listed in the squad, but I think there's still question marks over him. Shane Long is a real question marks around Shane Long as well. So, I mean, does Harry Arthur come back and play? I mean, and if you're sitting down to look at the team now and look at the options that are available, does Harry Arthur go into your side?
Well, I hope that the decision will be made on his footballing ability. I hope there's no agenda as such. I don't think there particularly would be. I think Roy will probably laugh it off when he comes on there and think like it was like just a mountain out of a molehill as such. That's the way Roy sometimes backs off this controversy.
Do you think he believes that as well, Gary? Do you think that's actually Roy's view in it as well, that these disputes don't mean as much to him as they might to the person on the other side of it?
No, possibly not at the time, but listen, if it doesn't go Roy's way, he'll hold a grudge. There's no doubt about that. We all know that as such. But at the time, he probably would have been trying to push some buttons, trying to get a reaction. But at no point did Roy think that he was going to turn away and walk away from the squad just because he's had a dressing down as such. And there needs to be a little bit of context here. I'm not sure whether or not he was missing out on a training session that was a warm down or something like that. But if there's a training session, and Kenny Cunningham alluded to it this morning, if there's a training session where you're actually working on a little bit of shape, you need players out there. Now, I know players are more in control of their destiny than ever in terms of injuries, and they won't be forced into doing anything. But I just think they just blew out of all proportion. And people will say, listen, that type of language is not part of the modern day football, and it possibly isn't. And I think the coaches, I think managers have to change quicker than players will revert or change and go back to how it was. And that's not going to happen. Players won't go back in how it was in the good old days as such, and that nonsense. It's a modern day now, and I think Roy, along with a lot of coaches, a lot of managers of his generation, are going to have to learn how to cajole these players to get the best out of them.
So as I mentioned, Seamus Coleman is out. So is this Matt Doherty's chance? Is this the window for Matt Doherty to finally show what he can do?
Well, listen, if he doesn't play now, this suggests that it's just that his face doesn't fit. I think Matt said the same thing himself. At times, it just doesn't work out like that. Because you have to look, and Dan, you've seen Wolves. He's been exceptional, not only this year in the Premier League, which obviously the elite level. You got to see if you can cope with the jump from the Championship. But he's been consistently playing so well at a club that there's maybe a massive turnover in terms of the quality players that they're getting in from mainland Europe, Champions League players. And yet he's survived that coal, and nailed down a position. And to suggest that he's not as gifted going forward as Cyrus Christie is his main competitor for that understudy to Seamus, it doesn't really add up if you watch Wolves play. He's been very good, and I think we have to find a way to assist him, maybe to, if he likes Christie in the team, to maybe get Doherty in it as well, whether or not he plays a 3 and plays Doherty on the right, or I don't know. But I think Matt Doherty can quite rightly turn up to that squad and say, listen, is there anyone playing better in my position that's Irish? And you'd have to argue, no, there isn't.
Yeah, because I mean, we spoke in Cardiff before the game, and to be fair, you called it. You felt it was going to be 4 at the back, and a couple of us were thinking, oh no, maybe this, with this personnel, it'll be 3 at the back, and Coleman maybe on the right at a 3, and Christie or whatever variation of that it would be. But are we now at the situation where, to accommodate Matt Doherty, you should play 3 at the back?
Well, I would never be of the belief that you've got to get your most high-profile players and pack them into an 11 as such, just because he's playing Premier League, and maybe a contradiction of myself there that he's playing so well. There has to be a balance, and it has to work rightly. But in that balance, I can't see an argument for him not to be in that team, and certainly not to give him an opportunity to show whether or not he can cope at another jump from Premier League level to international level, because he's made the jump from the Championship to Premier League effortlessly, really. So I want to see how he can cope at this level in terms of the pressure playing for your country, what it means to not only yourself as a dream come true, but your family and all that. You have to deal with all those outside issues and focus on giving a good performance at a time when it's desperately needed, because we need some positives. And certainly his form at club level is one of those. But I don't know, Martin O'Neill, obviously up to this point, suggests that he doesn't favour him. But I don't think that can continue, bearing in mind how poorly we're playing for Ireland and how well he's playing at Wolves.
So yeah, the forward options then. I mean, this is the other thing. I mean, John Walters is doing an interview earlier. That's because he's primarily, he's injured for the next 6 months. So he's out of the equation. We've got Shane Long, who's a doubt. We've got Graham Burke, who's not playing at Preston. Callum Robinson, he is playing. Sean Maguire on the way back. Scott Hogan hasn't played this season. Aidan O'Brien, okay, he's playing more so on the wing for Millwall. And then Ronan Curtis is included. He was on fire, but it's in League One. So where are these goals going to come from, Gary?
Well, this is the problem, and it's not just in terms of the quality we have available now. We've had an over-reliance on Robbie Keane for so long. I think Shane Long often argued that if as soon as he could come out of the shadow of Robbie Keane, he'd go on and get goals regularly. He failed to do so, and that's because of that's taking nothing away from him as a player, but that's just puts in context what Robbie did for us in terms of a goal scorer. Even when Robbie was first coming, we had goal scorers like David Connolly. People who knew where the back of the net was were scoring at a regular basis as such. We don't seem to have that now at that level. But there's an opportunity for these young guys. Now, you said it about O'Brien. He came on, done ever so well, got his goal. But it's a difficult one because we're not a team that creates a number of chances throughout a game. We create very little. We more often than not look to hit teams on the break with pace. The very fact that McLean's come back from injury bodes well as well. I think he'll be a little bit short of match fitness, but not energy. He'll always give you that, James. But certainly we understood in terms of before this squad was named that we haven't got the depth that we had previously. But if I was talking to those young players now, I'd be saying, this is an opportunity. Can you take it? Can you make up the difference in levels that you're playing, and can you grab your chance and make a name for yourself? And that should be what they all aim for.
Yeah, because it's funny, I'm probably contradicting myself and even our previous chat about Matt Doherty here, but should we obsess sometimes about where the lads are playing at, or should we just judge Aidan O'Brien on the merits of how he did in Poland and the role he fulfilled for the team, regardless of how he's fared at club level since then?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. I think, listen, the normal chain of thought is how well are you performing and at what level for your club, and that essentially then translates to can you become an international player. It doesn't work like that for Ireland, and it hasn't for many years, to be perfectly honest. Quite often we've had lots of lads who are not in their first team but will be certain starters for Ireland. So as long as the dynamic is right and we can put out a competitive team, then I'd shy away from the fact that the level they're playing, it's a massive jump. I'm not naive to think that someone can play lower Championship level and comfortably make the step up, because against international centre-halves or whatever your opposition is on the pitch, it's very difficult. These are seasoned professionals. They know what they're doing at the top of their game. But it's an opportunity. And I'd never underestimate what pulling that green jersey does to players, how it elevates them. And it does for so many, and it has done throughout the years, throughout our footballing history, going back to 1988 in terms of our pioneer, our original heroes. they all elevated their performances that was not in keeping with the level they were particularly playing. So it's an opportunity, but certainly there's no ignoring the fact that we are lacking depth.
Now, Gary's going to stay with us, but just to go to tonight's Europa League, it's still scoreless between Chelsea and Vidi at Stamford Bridge. Now, at half-time, Niall Quinn, on the team of goal-scoring Irish strikers, was on Virgin Media Sport talking about Alvaro Morata's struggles in front of goals.
It's that thing that happens to all strikers, you know, and you go into a little bit of a rut and you start to second guess yourself. And I think particularly for the one he's tried to lift over the keeper and he's put half a yard wide, I mean, a man on form snaps that up and smiles as he gets the chance because he knows he's going to score, whereas this time he's a little bit laboured. And I do think it plays on your mind. You know, only the great players who are really cold and don't let it bother them get away with that, and they just get to the next goals, you know. But I just detect from him he needs one pretty badly now, just to take a weight off his shoulders. But his build-up play, as you say, has been excellent, and they've another 45 minutes to do it.
Now, that's Niall Quinn speaking on Virgin Media Sport tonight. That's the new home of European football in Ireland, with more than 400 UEFA Champions League, Europa League and Nations League games live this season. Virgin Media Sport is exclusive to all Virgin Media TV customers, who can also download the TV Anywhere app and stream all the action whenever and wherever they like. Now, this is the beauty of live radio, because pretty much just as we threw to Niall Quinn, Chelsea broke the deadlock and the goal scorer was Alvaro Morata. So there we go. I'm not really sure what Niall was talking about then, Gary. I mean, you know, he's just bluffing it there, surely.
He's talking about his own career there and struggles in front of goal. But no, listen, Morata he has struggled in terms of his CV coming to Chelsea as a headline act. I never saw it as a good signing in terms of replacing Costa, because Costa was sensational for him. I think it was always going to be difficult for him. I think even the fact now that Giroud gives him that type of physicality that Costa did, he's not as mobile. I know that, but certainly when you see Giroud playing up front, Hazard has got a platform to play off of, and Hazard's been absolutely sensational. But in talking about Morata, I'm sure, as Niall said there, just getting that one goal, hopefully now, will boost his confidence and he'll go on a run.
What do you reckon, like, the mindset is of the guys who are on the midweek team? I know they've made some changes tonight and they've had a busy enough schedule, but I mean, I guess for someone like Morata, he's playing tonight because maybe he's not going to be a first choice option at the weekend or going forward. And I mean, you could spin it as a positive and say it's a test of character that he's playing and scoring, but he must know, if you're on that sort of B team to a point, that things aren't going fantastically well for you here.
No, you know that. Of course you do. I mean, you're not very a realist if you feel that that's not the scenario as such. But I tell you what, those midweek games give you, especially ones of this stature in terms of playing in Europe, is an opportunity, because you can go and play reserve games as such, training, and it's never really going to count. But if he can score goals every time he gets an opportunity to play, then that suddenly gets in the thoughts of the manager. And I would think, as a centre forward, certainly Morata and any of those centre forwards at Chelsea, they must be desperate to play under Sarri, because if you think about the goals that Higuain got when in Serie A under Sarri, he sets his whole team up for a forward to get the opportunity. So I'm sure that they're desperate to get that nod in the big games in the Premier League, and this is the way to do it. Prove your manager wrong by scoring goals when you get the opportunity. It's
funny, though, the perception of Olivier Giroud has possibly changed in the last year to a degree. I mean, he played a part in a World Cup winning team, albeit he got a bit of grief as a non-goal scorer. But I think people have now realised that to play alongside him, you're going to look pretty good next to Giroud because of the qualities that he brings.
Well, listen, this was often the stick was used to beat Arsene Wenger at Arsenal, that as a centre-forward, Giroud wasn't of the quality required to win a league as such. You know, Arsenal judging that on the likes of Henry, Bergkamp, those type of guys, and Elka before him. So perhaps he's not at that level, but he certainly is a functional player, and he does bring others into the game. And I think you're quite right. He can turn around now and say he's a World Cup winner. He looks like he's played ever so well anytime I've seen him at Chelsea. And he's not one who's going to spin and run channels and stuff like that. But he just stands up there and just gives you an option. And I think if you think about the quality of Chelsea's team over the last 4 or 5 seasons, Costa was fantastic, of course he was, but the real quality, the top level quality, has always been in that second line of attack with the likes of Hazard, Willian, those type of guys, Pedro as well. So certainly if they can just get a centre forward who can just allow those guys to get into the game, it does bode well for them. And they've had a fantastic start already.
OK, well, listen, Gary, thanks very much for your time this evening. Hopefully when you're back next, we'll have maybe happier Irish football stories to discuss. But
fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed indeed. Well, up next, though, we've got Hertha Berlin, our big talking point in Germany at the moment. They're back amongst the big boys of the Bundesliga, and we'll hear from Uli Hesse next.
Football on Off the Ball.
In association with the faster than ever Boyle Sports app. Multiples made easy and personalised content on every sport. Download it now. Boyle Sports. Time to play.
News Talk Breakfast.
What we don't need, which is insanity and repeating all the mistakes of the past. A special savings scheme to help first-time buyers is being considered as part of Budget 2019, supposedly to help people get on the property ladder. It is very similar to the old first-time buyers grant we used to have. This proposal, run a mile from it. It sounds seductive. I can understand people listening this morning who are out there will think, oh yeah, this is great. All it will do, it'll subsidise builders once again.
News Talk Breakfast.
In association with AIR.
Back tomorrow on News Talk.
Woodies are celebrating 30 years of homemaking with some devilish deals for the season ahead. Like 50% off all Halloween costumes and decorations, so you can go twice as scary. 3 for 2 on all Dulux interior paint, selected laminate flooring, half price, and all flat pack furniture, bar stools, saucepans and baking tins, slashed to half price. Woodies, we're all homemakers. T's and C's and exclusions apply.
At Blackrock Clinic, we offer direct access to our expert team of endoscopy specialists. So if you're concerned about a stomach or bowel issue, we can quickly find the cause and whether it's serious or not. With a referral from your GP, an appointment can be arranged within 24 hours. For access to a world-class endoscopy unit, think first. Think Blackrock Clinic. Blackrock Clinic, when your experience needs ours.
Are you taking a chance with your car tyres? Second-hand or end-of-life tyres that have been discarded by another motorist could put you, your family and other road users at risk. Buying quality tyres could save you more than just money. Get your tyres checked at a Repack ELT member today. We have 2,800 member outlets nationwide. Remember, safe tyres save lives. Visit repackelt.ie to find out more. Repack ELT, supporting National Road Safety Week.
Are you a self-assessed income taxpayer? The October 31st pay and file deadline is approaching fast. The quickest and easiest way to file your return and pay your tax is by using ROS, Revenue's online service. It also gives you until November 14th. Register for ROS today at revenue.ie. Avoid a surcharge, interest, penalties and the risk of a tax audit. Pay and file on time.
Off the Ball. This is News Talk.
Last week on the football show, it was their intention to speak about Hertha Berlin and how they might possibly be on the rise in the Bundesliga, but events interceded. Bayern Munich dropped their first points of the season as we spoke and as we were to set up the piece, and so they were pushed back. But as Bayern Munich's season got even worse in the league last weekend at the hands of Hertha BSC, it's time, I suppose, we spoke about the rising sleeping giants of Berlin football. Joining us on the line to do just that is the journalist and author Uli Hesse. Uli, you're very welcome again to the show. It is one of those stories that through the years has shown signs, perhaps, that Hertha might be taking the next step towards being a what we might call top club, for want of a better term. But there is a seeming sense, given the finishes of the past couple of years in the Bundesliga, given the money that has been invested, and now given the results that are starting to appear on the pitch this season, that things actually might finally be heading in that direction for Hertha.
Yeah, they might, and it would be a major surprise. Because you spoke of a sleeping giant, but I mean, most people would agree that the Hertha were a lot more than just sleeping. It's mainly, it's mainly non-Germans who think of Hertha as a potentially big club. Seeing as they come from the capital, and it's certainly a very unusual situation that a major footballing country like Germany doesn't have really a top club in the capital. But for most,
No, but it is one of those situations whereby a lot of people, when they look around Europe and they see the Madrids who are able to foster two big sides, London and the amount of sides they'd have in the top flight and also competing in European football, Paris now I guess is the same with the rise of PSG, and on to Rome and all the major cities across Europe. When you look at Berlin, and I know that social factors have an issue with this, it's a surprise that it has taken this long, that we haven't had a Berlin champion in Germany since the 1930s. It just seems unusual.
Yes. Well, of course, you're right. It's probably unique, I mean, offhand, I just can't think of any comparable situation. As I said, Germany is a major footballing country. It's not like so we should have a top team in the capital. Of course, it's got historic reasons. You have to remember that when the Bundesliga was formed, it was formed relatively late in the 1960s. That was when professional football was fully legalized in Germany, or not fully, because there were salary caps and then caps on transfers. So and Hertha, were playing football in a city that was surrounded by a wall, and then technically speaking, right smack in the middle of what was then enemy territory. So it was very hard for the club to convince, young, entertaining people that they should come to Berlin to play football. So, they got around this through under-the-table payments, and that has, that triggered a long chain of scandals. For many, many decades, Hertha was a byword in German for shady dealings and football scandals.
You can kind of see
this is the club. Just to give you one example. This is the club where the treasurer was an undertaker, and he hid black money, laundered money, and illegally printed tickets in the coffins, because he knew the police wouldn't be looking there.
Used coffins or unused coffins, I have to ask there.
Unused, I hope.
Good, okay, grand. Yeah, it's a clarification I needed, and I'm not sure why. On that, you can see why, as I mentioned, with Berlin being walled off as it was for so many years, how Hertha might, I suppose, struggle for elbow room. It's kind of a hard thing to reconcile, I guess, for people. When you see Berlin, trouble as it was a hive, I think, artistically for a lot of people. A lot of people migrated there. We kind of think of the Bowies and the U2s of this world to try and make some great art there. The same didn't happen for top-level footballers. It never became a key destination or a marquee destination for them during those years in the same way it would have done artistically for people.
But you also have to remember that there was a reason why people went there, why it became a centre for artists. And that, what happened first was that young people left the city, in huge numbers. So then everybody thought, what can we do to stop this, migration of young talent? And they issued a number of laws that would attract young people. For instance, we had conscription in Germany, and if you lived in Berlin, you didn't have to go to the army. So a lot of young people went to Berlin for that reason alone, and that's also, and of course that sort of, how would you say, that suffocating atmosphere is also sort of invigorating. Maybe is that the right word for young people? So it fostered an atmosphere of, let's party because we don't know if there will be a tomorrow. So that's what attracted all those people. But it was probably not the ideal ground to foster footballing talent. So lots of people left Hertha Berlin, lots of players from Berlin.
In terms of, you mentioned there that a lot of people would have possibly, for one instance, gravitated towards Berlin. How decent or otherwise a job did the club do of, I suppose, gaining a following in the city, having people love it as a part and a key part of the city in the same way that other football clubs would be in major cities?
Yes, it's always been a slight problem for Hertha. I mean, they are traditionally seen as the club, in the city. They also had a large loyal following on the other side of the wall. A lot of Easterners considered, Hertha Berlin the Berlin club. But at the same time, their major city rivals are Union Berlin, who are playing in the second division. And a lot of people think that Union are the more, are the cooler, hipper, more groovy club. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons for that is that Union have a strictly defined identity and a home. And Hertha don't really have that. And the main reason for that is that when the Bundesliga came into being, they had to leave their old ground, sort of in the north of the city, and move to a bigger ground. And that's the Olympic Stadium. And it has always been a problem for Hertha, that they're playing in what is not their spiritual home, in the city. And that they're playing in a vast stadium, It has a great atmosphere for cup finals and when it's sold out, but even if there's, for Hertha, a decent crowd, but even if, say 40,000 come out, it just doesn't make for a good atmosphere in the stadium.
Why was it in the lead up to 2006, when so many other grounds were being regenerated in Germany, that it was never thought that perhaps Hertha might benefit from being one of those clubs? Like, clearly they were always going to use the Olympiastadion as a ground for the World Cup itself and for the final, as we know. But surely it would have behooved the owners, the people in charge of Hertha, the people surrounding it, to maybe lean on the DFB and kind of ask them, listen, what's the chances of actually getting our own ground here? It would surely benefit us. We've seen the example, I guess, would be in Italy, would be Juventus, whereby they played in the massive Delle Alpi that was huge and soulless and absolutely no use to them whatsoever in terms of an atmosphere. And you now look at them now, they've downscaled into a fantastic facility with about 45,000 people right on top of the pitch. And it just seems like a better experience for the players, for the club and for the fans. It seems like Hertha would have benefited from some kind of project like that in 2003, 2004.
Absolutely, they would have, and they might even have if they had. The Olympic Stadium was, of course, rebuilt for the World Cup.
Yeah.
But it was not made into a football-only ground, for various reasons. One of them having to do with it's a listed building, And the other main thing is that, Hertha don't own the ground. They just rent it from the city. And that's another thing about Berlin, which some people suffer from the misconception that Berlin, being such a big city, being the capital and being so, it's one of the hippest places on earth right now. I mean, lots of people come here. That people think it's a rich city, but it is not. It's actually a very, very poor city. So the city just was in no position to say, we're going to build a football-only ground just for one club, and give it to them. And that was always out of the question. One of the former mayors of Berlin, he once quipped that Berlin is poor but sexy. And then that's pretty much how it is. But having said that, Hertha actually they will build their own ground. They right now they've extended the rent with the city for another 5-6 years, I think. They've already announced that after that period they will build their own ground. And now the main question is where. They've even threatened to leave the city, which is probably just gamesmanship, because what they really want to do, what Hertha want to do, is they want to build a smaller football-only ground not far from the Olympic Stadium. So on that area, so that maybe for the really big games they can use the Olympic Stadium and their own ground for the other games.
With that, we're kind of thinking 5-6 years down the line that may happen. I know we're very early into the season in the Bundesliga so far, but the results have been encouraging, and if you have those encouraging results off the back of a few top 10 places and finishes since the return to the top flight in the past couple of years, as I mentioned, there seems to be a gaining sense of optimism around the club. And I mean, when you beat Bayern Munich 2-0 in the Bundesliga at home, like, people are bound to get wrapped up in that a little bit.
Yeah, there was a buzz around the club even before that game.
Okay,
and that was, what Hertha have not been during the last couple of years is, I just said that Berlin is considered as poor but sexy, and then Hertha Berlin have never been sexy. That's always been their slight problem. They've they even hired one of the most famous PR agencies in Germany to come up with a campaign, which backfired because it was aimed towards tourists and out-of-towners and sounded very hip, and had text speak and a lot of English words and that. But they changed that during the summer. During the summer, they changed course and decided that if they want to be a big club, they should be a big club for the city first. So now they're targeting lots of smaller clubs in Berlin. They're going to tour the city this year, have training sessions at smaller clubs. And another thing that maybe has held them back is over the last couple of years, they've had a reputation as being very hard to beat, but not very attractive. And a lot of people said that was down to the character, to the manager, Paul Dardai. And they said he was, he pretty much saved them from the brink a couple of seasons ago, but they said he would not be able to take the next step. So Hertha Berlin now playing attacking offensive football this season, that has taken everybody by surprise. And it was a most pleasant surprise. Yeah,
Paul Dardai, as you mentioned there, a mainstay, I guess, of the club as a player, and now in the past couple of years as a manager as well. He's got Michael Preetz above him as a director of football, I believe. There seems to be some kind of continuity and some kind of sense, like whereas previously there was kind of big name coaches or young up and coming coaches almost parachuted into the club. There seems to be a sense of continuity now where you've got guys who performed well for the club over a number of years in positions of power, and they have a sense of where the club ought to be rather than where it has been in the past couple of years.
Yes, exactly. These are all people who know the club very well and who know, the club's position in the city. And I think they're on a good course now. They're taking it step by step. And again, well, at the end of the day, what counts is the football. It's not the ad campaigns. It's not the new stadium. It's not who is in charge. It's just what you do on the pitch. And that, as I said, has been a pleasant surprise. It's not just beating Bayern Munich, but the way they've been playing during the first weeks of the season. That was very encouraging, and that's why there is this buzz around the team at the moment in the city.
Yeah. And while we have you on, Uli, I want to touch on Euro 2024. I think it's a week or so removed from the announcement that Germany had staved off competition from Turkey to seal the event for the European Championships in 2024. How has that announcement been received? And I guess, more to the point, how does that reception differ from, I suppose, the announcement that it got the World Cup in 2006, or for 2006, I should say?
Yeah, a lot of people have forgotten that, but when we were awarded the World Cup in 2006, it came as a total surprise. I still remember that on the day before, the ballot was announced, there was a piece in a national newspaper that said, the poorest guy on the planet right now is Franz Beckenbauer, because he's been touring the globe for years and years and speaking to everybody. And it was all in vain, because South Africa are going to win the World Cup, are going to be awarded the World Cup. Very few people doubted that here in Germany. So it came as a total surprise. Nobody expected it. And but it did, of course, trigger one of the great most recent football booms. And I think people hope that it's going to happen again, because, football feels a bit flat at the moment in Germany, if that's the right word. There's still the repercussions from the World Cup, which have been very unpleasant, not just on the pitch, but also off the pitch. And there's a general feeling that maybe the Bundesliga can no longer compete with the other top leagues, because we don't have investors and things like that. So I think that a lot of people have hope that it would sort of, kickstart a new football boom.
How much of that, not necessarily pessimism, but that kind of downcast outlook on the Bundesliga and how it's performing in and of itself, how much of that is centred around the fact that it's been dominated so much by Bayern, and even Borussia Dortmund's challenge over the last number of years has faltered compared to what it was under the early days of Jurgen Klopp?
Yeah, of course, that's a major reason. Yeah, it's not so. Sort of the national team is always, seen as being a symbol for the, for the game, but really, it's the day-to-day business that has become a bit boring, mundane over the last couple of years with Bayern's dominance. Yeah, and this has also triggered, a debate about the 50+1 rule in Germany, about maybe how the status quo is always in Bayern's favour. But then again, as you said, it's still early hours, but the first weeks of the Bundesliga have been really, really good. I don't know if people noticed that, but there's lots of really, really good games, lots of goals in both in the first and the second Bundesliga. Yeah. There's been an encouraging start to the new season, and I hope it could continue, and we're going to have some more excitement this season.
Yeah, I guess from everybody's point of view, it would kind of benefit for there to be a challenge and to be a club, like we mentioned, like a Hertha, to actually challenge in the upper echelons of the league.
Yeah, for Bayern as well. I mean, they know themselves that they need competition at home. So they're, historically, they've always been in a very strange situation as being, sort of the top dog with no traditional rival.
We wait with great trepidation to see what happens throughout the course of the next few months, and especially, as I mentioned, to see how Hertha build on this fine start to the season. For now, Uli Hesse, thanks so much for taking time out to speak to us.
That's my pleasure. Thank you.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
This year in Ireland, over 60,000 people will turn 65. That's an extra 60,000 people who will be eligible for pneumococcal vaccination through the National Immunisation Programme. Pneumococcal disease, or pneumo, can cause death and serious illness. Of those who get pneumo, 1 in 4 will get pneumonia, 1 in 4 will get meningitis, and 1 in 10 will die. Pneumo vaccination is recommended if you're 65 and over, or if you're in an at-risk group such as people living with diabetes, asthma or heart disease. disease. Talk to your GP, practice nurse or pharmacist today about pneumo vaccination or visit pneumo.ie. Brought to you by MSD, supported by Age Action, Diabetes Ireland, the Asthma Society of Ireland and CRE.
Come in, Agent.
HQ, this is Agent Deirdre.
Go ahead.
Observations on human cleverness this week. The humans continue to iron their undergarments. An exhausting activity to which we can see no point whatsoever.
Nobody sees them.
However, they have been clever enough to switch to Energia, where they get Ireland's cheapest dual-fuel bundle.
Which is good, given their obsession with ironing underpants. Very good, little humans. Save and save again with Energia.
Switch to energia.ie.
Based on average annual usage, discounted unit rate, standing charge, PSO levy and carbon tax. Prices September 24th, 2018 and subject to change. T's and C's and early termination fee apply. Estimated annual bill €1,534. Verification energia.ie/EAB.
Sun cream?
Check.
Nappies? Wet wipes?
Check.
14 changes of clothes?
Check.
And we are ready to leave the house.
You do a lot to protect your family, so now you can protect their future too. Life assurance from Post Insurance can provide a secure future for your family, should anything happen to you. Call us on 1890 222222 and see how we can help protect your family's future today. Life assurance from Post Insurance. Life looked after. Acceptance criteria, terms and conditions apply. One Direct Ireland Limited, trading as Post Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. One Direct Ireland Limited is a wholly owned subsidiary of An Post. Post Insurance is a tied agent of New Ireland Assurance Company plc for life assurance business. Life assurance policies are underwritten and provided by New Ireland Assurance Company plc.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.